Long shot, long rebound, nice control tap that time by Len. Up ahead for Morris, he's got it, he scores!
Nice pass. Real nice pass.
Wow. Man, what'd you think of that one, man? That was a pretty nice pass.
LeBron James to Markieff Morris.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Basketball Passport Pod. My name is Leigh. I'm joined by Lakers insider Anthony Irwin, who, a bit of a rough night there last night for the team, but Bronny Jr. had a good game. We'll chat a little bit about that. Also want to get your thoughts here and insights on Defensive Player of the Year. I spoke to Quinn Snyder about that this week. Adding a little tweak to the award there, the Boston Celtics got sold. Is that good news or bad news for you, do you think? I mean, what we've seen from owners in recent times, maybe it's a good thing. And the New Orleans Pelicans, we meant to get to this last week. We didn't have a show, but the New Orleans Pelicans will be in Australia, later this year. And then I'll be also talking a little bit about my trip to Hong Kong, which is coming up in May. Very excited about that. But how you doing there, Ant? Yeah, things good, man? What?
Yeah, it was the Lakers appear to be like fully healthy on Saturday for the first time in what has been a little while. They obviously got smacked by Giannis and the Bucks when they played, I think, one actual rotation player last night. I think Jackson was the only guy who figures into the rotation, and it looked like it. But hey, Bronny had a fun little game. Was kind of hoping Dalton Connect would get 60 shots up. He didn't, things are good. The fact that the sky isn't falling after the extremely long injury list last night. Yeah, I think we're doing okay.
I tell you, every day I look at the standings, and the Lakers are either second or they're sixth or somewhere in the middle there. They've either, they've kind of put themselves in a position where they've locked up home court order. It's like, oh man, they're actually going to have to get out of this first round on the road. Where are they sitting right now? I think they're probably fourth, are they? They are fourth, yeah. So they would have the Grizzlies right now, but that is so tight there between, the Rockets, 12 and a half games back. We know no one's catching the Thunder, but even the Clippers, who are seventh right now, are only 5.5 games back there of the Rockets. So much movement there can still happen between now and a couple of weeks to go before the end of the season. But I just wanted to touch quickly on Bronny there because, it's obviously it's a story whether we like it or not. But last night, from everything I've seen of him, he looked pretty comfortable out there. Took some shots, hit some threes, passed the ball pretty well, had a nice little floater going. What were your thoughts on just from where he was at the start of the season to what you saw there last night?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway in terms of just basketball is he has really improved from the first time we saw him, even from a few weeks ago or a month or so ago when Stephen A. Smith went out and asked if LeBron was a good father for putting his son through this. So like Bronny, I guess he's taking strides and he's improving, and it's been nice because I was thinking about this, Lee. It's one of those rare situations where I believe it's much more of a national story than it is a local story.
Right.
Everything about the Lakers right now is about Luka and about the title pursuit right now. And it's actually been really good, I think, for Bronny that locally he can go out and play his G League games and he can focus on developing down there. And then in a situation like last night where the Lakers don't have anybody healthy, he can go out there and he can showcase some of the steps forward that he's taken. And then he can, after that game, when everybody gets healthy again on Saturday, Bronny can, again, just go down and focus on his improvement in the G League. And then you'll get because they're probably going to blow out the Bulls on Saturday. So you'll probably get the Bronny chance there. And that's all fun or whatever. But yeah, I was thinking about it. It's the kind of thing that it's going to be mentioned a lot more on national shows today than it's been mentioned on any of the local platforms covering the team.
Yeah, well, I guess as well going into that game, the Bucks. Lillard didn't play, but as long as Giannis is out there, the Bucks should win that game. But that's what it does come down to for Bronny is it's tough for him to come out in spot minutes when you've got a mostly full roster or garbage time and be effective. You need to be in a situation like that where you get some real minutes, and it's like we actually need you to do some stuff out there tonight. So, but I just thought there's a lot more. He's got a lot more patience already. That what I've noticed, and he's stepping into a couple of those threes fairly confidently. So, young man. It's a story one way or the other, and I thought it was something there last night.
I thought it was funny though. After the game, everybody's asking about, oh man, how are you making it through all of this brutal situation that you find yourself in? And it's just like, guys, come on. He's the son of LeBron James. He's on the Lakers because he's the son of LeBron James. And he gets he is the focus of the South Bay Lakers. His development is the focus of the South Bay Lakers because he's the son of LeBron James. Yeah, Stephen A. Smith saying, speaking nonsense about him and his dad is ridiculous. But Stephen A. Smith says nonsense about everybody in sports. So it's not even necessarily unique there either. I really appreciate that he's put in the work to become a better basketball player. But last night, you would think that this guy is like, coming straight off of a war path to play in a basketball game. It's like, no, he's been in the South Bay Lakers. Like the travel with the South Bay Lakers isn't so terrible that it's actual.
Who's the coach of the South Bay Lakers?
Ah, man, I should know his name. He was just hired at the beginning of the season, actually doing a really good job in terms of getting guys. There's a lot more cohesiveness between the South Bay Lakers and the actual Lakers this year. That's why you're seeing guys come up from their two-way contracts, Christian Coloco, Jordan Goodwin, Trey Jamison. There's a lot more. Those guys are a lot more capable with the actual Lakers this year than they've been in the past. And yeah, it's really helped everybody. And I think Bronny is really benefiting from all of that as well. But this notion that he's like he has it particularly tough. That's where I kind of draw the line. I'm like, guys, look,
yeah,
come on.
Well, I mean, being the son of anyone is so famous must have its drawbacks for sure. But
yeah,
and
its benefits.
Yeah, it does too. It does too. Moving on here, because this is an interesting one. This one does have a little bit more of a connection to me here with Defensive Player of the Year because obviously I'm covering and following the Hawks all season long, and Dyson Daniels is having just an incredible defensive season. And since Victor Wembanyama went down just after the All-Star game, he was the sure thing favorite to win this award going into that point. He's no longer eligible. And so it's opened up. And according to various betting sites, Evan Mobley from the Cleveland Cavaliers is the favorite and the likely winner. But Dyson really has seemed to have put himself there up to, I would say, no worse than third, most likely second on a lot of websites. Jaron Jackson said Draymond Green is still hovering around, which I did not expect, but he put him. He obviously thinks he's the favorite to win it. But it was something that I wanted to ask Quinn Snyder about the other day at Hawks pregame because he obviously coached Rudy Gobert to 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards, so he knows what it takes. And I said to him, like, do you think this award too heavily favors the big men? And if so, do you think a case could be made for having 2 Defensive Player of the Years, one as a perimeter based or a small, and one as a big, because it's very difficult to quantify impact on defense because what's better? What's more important, stopping a guy from getting to the rim or having the guy who, once you get there, turns away guys and stops guys from putting up shots? And so, I don't think the NBA is going to do that. But the reason I brought it up to Quinn was because this year they are announcing each month a defensive player of the conference. And they sort of share that around and, they come up with, stats and things like that. But I just wanted to see what your thoughts are on potentially having 2 Defensive Player of the Year award, because ultimately in the entire awards existence, apart from Gary Payton, Marcus Smart, Kawhi is not a big per se, neither is Draymond per se, but those, and Michael Cooper, of course, won the inaugural one back there in 1987. But other than that, it just tends to go to a big man, almost as if it's almost like the guy who scores the most points just wins 6-man, takes nothing else into account. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's always kind of felt like the Defensive Player of the Award is given to bigs because they aren't necessarily always considered for MVP. It's kind of like the Offensive Player of the Year is for the best non-quarterback in football.
Right.
And I don't know. I just think when you basically have an unwritten rule system, you're going to get yourself into trouble because the logic is going to be inherently flawed. And I actually think, especially watching the Lakers this year, Leigh, the Lakers were bad defensively earlier on this season. And that was with Anthony Davis anchoring the defense. And then they got better. They got D'Angelo Russell out of the starting lineup, started Max Christie, and they took a step forward there. Then they traded D'Angelo Russell for Dorian Finney-Smith. And once they traded their worst defender in D'Angelo Russell for somebody who's been probably their most solid defender in Dorian Finney-Smith, the Lakers have been an elite defense since. And that was also a chunk of that was before the Luka trade and with Anthony Davis out of the lineup. And initially it was like, well, small sample size. Are they actually that good? This and that and the other. And what we've come to find out is actually the way that the Lakers are defending on the perimeter alleviates the amount of pressure that Jackson Hayes has to operate under. And I do actually think that perimeter defenders, especially wings, to me are, if you have an elite wing or if you have a set of really good to elite wings, your defense is probably going to be more capable in this modern era than one that is just anchored by a Rudy Gobert, an Anthony Davis, a Victor Wembanyama, one of those guys that you have to basically guide the game to so that they can make their biggest impact. Just basically dissuading players from getting into the paint like that. That actually, I think, is a significantly more modern way of defending. And I kind of wonder if the award is going to start, I guess, representing that shift a little bit better than it has to this point.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And Quinn sort of was a bit stuck because of the same reasoning. Like, it's better if you don't have to make your big guy work, but therefore then it sort of, it doesn't allow him in some ways to show how important and impactful you can be on the defensive end. But, the thing with Dyson, like he obviously came over in the trade there with the Pelicans, but he was more the throw-in rather than the key piece of the trade. I mean, the Pelicans, the Hawks won. Yeah, the Hawks
that should be an award, the Shannon Brown Award.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I'm trying as well to not be too biased, A, covering the Hawks, and B, being an Australian, and B and C, being from basically, a town half an hour, 45 minutes away from there. But, if you do look at just the counting stats as far as steals and deflections and things like that, I mean, Dyson, no one's going to get near him. No one's got near him for the last 15 years, so he's doing that. And what he also does, and what I've been working on a little bit here is every time he creates a steal, how many times it leads directly to a basket. It's not just a change of possession, but he often either runs down and dunks it himself or fills up the bucket, or he finds someone else in transition and they score from it. Because, if you can turn a turnover instantly into a score like that, that improves your impact as a defensive player. But again, I'm not sure how you quantify that. I saw that note there too from Hunter. Team defense is often more about who your worst defender is instead of who your best defender is. And he's right. He's right there that, if you've got a bad defender, you can try to hide those guys at times.
Should there be like a Razzie Award?
Yeah,
a WPOY, DPOY, the worst defensive player of the year.
Yeah. Oh man, Andre Bargnani would have won that. He would be the
every year named after Andre Bargnani.
Andrea and Jose Calderon, man. When I was on those Raptors, man, they were bad.
Yeah, I just think nowadays you have so many great ball handlers, and they come in all shapes and sizes, literal shapes in Luka's case, right? Where Dallas was worried about the actual shape of his body. But the wings that have to handle all of those kinds of players. On one night you're guarding Giannis, and on another night you're guarding Luka, and on another night you're guarding Steph, and on another, like those kinds of wings that have to handle those responsibilities, those point of attack defenders too, who are the first line of defense against those elite offensive creators, whether that be for themselves or for others. Like, I don't know. I actually think that they, to me, are probably a little bit more impactful than just the anchor big. And it's kind of blasphemous. That's one of the age-old assumptions about defense is if you have a defense, you can't have an elite defense without an elite anchor. And for a long time, I think that was true. But Jackson Hayes isn't an elite anchor, and the Lakers have been playing elite defense now for going on a quarter of the season. Now we'll see if that actually holds steady throughout the postseason. And it does say something that, the Lakers' top priority going into this offseason is to upgrade from Jackson Hayes. But I don't know. It's tough to have experienced the Lakers defense while Anthony Davis was there, and then also experience the Lakers defense while he hasn't been there, and to see that marked shift in the approach to defense and its impact on teams. The Denver Nuggets have basically seen a steady diet of the way that the Lakers defended Jokic since that first game that they played against them. And that was again without Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's all really interesting. And I don't say all of this to besmirch Anthony Davis. He's one of the best defensive players I have ever seen. All that said, though, if you're going to rely solely on a big like AD, and maybe Anthony Davis would have been more impactful if he had better defenders around him, or he definitely would have been. But if we're going to give all of the credit to Anthony Davis there, then those bigs have to be absolutely special. Victor Wembanyama is that. Rudy Gobert is that. Anthony Davis in his own ways is that as well. But I think we do, like to Quinn Snyder's point and to the point you've made, we do have to find a way to reward those players who allow those guys to be as impactful as they are. And Dyson Daniels is a great example of that.
Yeah, and if you look at the hustle stats, which again, you're starting to get into the geeky terms and the nerdy stats here, but those are things that the defensive players need to measure impact, because again, it's easy to look at Luka and say, he's 30 points a game and 11 assists. It's like, okay, those numbers, we know them, we're familiar with them. So we need to almost flush out what the glossary of a deflection is and what does it mean. Like, you just touch the ball, does that count? Or does it do you deflect it and it goes to your teammate's feet and he picks it up and takes it down the other end and scores? And how hard, how much of an impact does that carry on his team? Because Dyson, combining steals and deflections, is averaging 9 per game, which is a massive number. And again, because I've been there at every home game, there are still times where it's like, okay, he created that steal, but it went to, Onyeka Okongwu, who picked it up, and Okongwu gets credit with the steal. Yeah. Now, in real time, you obviously don't see the deflection stats, but it's probably one of those ones. But then it's other times you see it, and the steal does get credited to the person who creates or initiates the steal. So it's an interesting.
It's kind of like getting credit for tipping the ball out.
Yeah,
those guys. Tyson Chandler used to rack up offensive rebounds by just smacking the ball out there, and he definitely initiated the offensive rebound, even though he didn't actually secure the board. Yeah. It is one of those weird spots.
And that's the thing as well. You see with Jokic sometimes, like, well, he just got 5 offensive rebounds on that play, but he'll only get credited with, 1 or 2, but it's interesting. I mean, obviously we have 2 all NBA team defense awards as well. So Daniels is going to be a lock for that first team. I think Dort will probably be on that. Mobley, Jaren Jackson, and maybe Gilgeous-Alexander as well, actually. But that's the award as well that LeBron has never won. He came second to Marc Gasol about 10 years or so ago. And there's no question LeBron deserved a DPOY, in my opinion. I mean, a guy who can defend any position the way that he could have. But again, I think part of it, what counts against him is like, well, you're winning MVP. And you're winning,
exactly.
We're not giving you DPOY as well. But we'll see. We'll see what the NBA does. I do think it's a step in the right direction, though, to actually acknowledge monthly Defensive Player of the Month. Again, it's one of those ones that I've looked at and I thought, how does Dyson not win this like 3 out of the 4 months already? But but they can't really, that would, I would guess, sort of tilt the award in his favor somewhat too. But anyway, we'll see what happens there. But interesting discussion there, and someone like Quinn, who's highly qualified to talk about, as I mentioned there, with Rudy winning it 3 times, and he may have his 4th if Dyson does come through and win it this season. The other thing I wanted to ask you about was the Celtics sold $6.1 billion.
Without that's without Leigh and Arena being tied to it.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
that's
right.
a really high number without
Yeah.
an arena being tied to the final asset acquisition
Yeah.
there.
And it's an
Unreal.
interesting, just an interesting setup there, because I always thought it was Wick Grousbeck was the sort of primary owner, but he wasn't. It was his dad, and Wick only had a small percentage, around 2%, but he did sort of run the team as the governor of the team, and he will apparently, according to the sale, there remain in that role for the next 3 seasons or so. As the new owners come in, there was a bit of tension behind the scenes of who exactly was going to buy the team and how it was going to be sold. But,
Mhm.
we talked a lot about Ishbia coming in there to Phoenix and just deciding, right, I'm going for the home run here. The Celtics are the team that, obviously the Lakers' biggest rival there. What do you think as a Lakers fan, seeing the Celtics change of ownership here and what this could mean in the immediate future? Because they've got some big contracts right now and they're going to be going into luxury tax. So, does the new ownership just say, right, we're just going to write a blank check and keep the Celtics here competitive, or do you think we might see, a few tweaks to that roster to allow, to keep them sort of from overspending?
So it was funny. I sent out. I don't know if you guys have noticed. I'm a Lakers fan. But I sent out a tweet. It was basically like, "Man, I can't wait for the Celtics to make that big dumb new owner move. Like, please destabilize this really really functional organization." And Celtics fans were like, no, it's not gonna happen, and that response I thought was really telling, where there is this unknown now. Now it turns out that Will Grisham, I believe, he's in Austin,
Yeah.
by the way, right?
Oh, is he?
I believe so.
Wow, I didn't know that.
But he apparently is a lifelong Celtics fan, and apparently he has had conversations with Brad Stevens about the way that the Celtics have been run recently and the way that it has led directly to those championships. And he says he doesn't want to come in there and mess up too much. But every owner says something along those lines. Patrick Dumont, I bet, if you go back and go through he's like, things are going pretty well. This Luka guy is pretty good. And then you turn around and Luka's a Lakers. So there is this amount of ambiguity as far as like what the impact of all of this is going to be. And I tend to think that 6.1 billion is a really high number. It probably could have been a little even higher if the payroll wasn't so high. They're gonna, their payroll is going to be upwards of $500 million over the next couple of years, because of luxury taxes and because of everything going on there. I would imagine it probably naturally was going to that number was probably going to be lowered anyway, because Drew Holiday is getting a little bit older. Al Horford is getting older. Kristaps Porzingis has really struggled to stay on the court over the last couple of years. So the Celtics might have decided to go in a different direction given his injury concerns. So I think there would have been some tough decisions made there regardless. Now I almost feel like they are givens. Like we're probably definitely going to. A-Rod came in, and when their new ownership group took over, one of the first things they talked about was lowering the cost of running that team. And then Wolves fans were like, oh, thank goodness they aren't going to be in charge. And then the Wolves traded Cat anyway. Like, I just think we're heading into a time where this new CBA is going to force a lot of these teams to make some of these tough calls anyway. And then you add on top of that the greatest variable of all, which is new ownership.
Yeah.
And I don't know that any Celtics fan can confidently right now. Maybe it works out. I'm not saying it's definitely going to go poorly, but there's no way that any Celtics fan can sit here today and be as confident as they were a couple of days ago before the sale went through.
Yeah, I think though as well, you have to look at what Ishbia has done and be like, resist that temptation. You don't need to. As long as you keep Tatum and Brown, I think you can just shuffle the deck around those guys. Now they're going to be earning both just gigantic money because they've both been drafted there, signed their extension. So Jaylen Brown, last year was the highest paid player, just out of loyalty to the team or being there for so long. So, but that's where I would approach it is like, Al Horford's going to be gone in a year or two max, or maybe not, maybe another 5 years with Al, he still performs. But yeah, everywhere else, you just have to just get a bit like what the Spurs did with Duncan and Ginobili and Parker, is just find guys throughout the season or who can complement those guys. But just as long as you keep those core players together, I think you'll be fine. But if you're an owner of a team right now, though, you're like the $6 billion, great. Now, the cheapest team is the value just skyrockets as well. I mean, I remember when Ballmer over 10 years ago paid 2.2 and was like, whoa, that's a lot of money. It's like, what would a Los Angeles, what would the Lakers get if they would have sell now? 10, 15 billion.
Yeah, at least 8 or 9, I would say.
Yeah.
Now, it's kind of a weird setup there, because if the Bus Trust does elect to sell, Guggenheim Sports has the right of first refusal, and they would probably just name a number that the Bus family would be comfortable with, and you would see that, I think, handled relatively quickly.
Right.
But Leigh, it's crazy though. Like this is the crazy part to me, and I want to take a step back and look at this in a more macro sense. Wyc Grousbeck looks at the Celtics as a huge chunk of his identity, right? You mentioned how his dad technically owns the team. He's the rare popular Nepo baby.
Yeah.
That never happens.
Yeah.
And then you have the Bus family. Jeannie Buss sees the Lakers as like a limb. Asking her to sell the Lakers would be like, hey, do you mind cutting off your left arm?
Yeah.
You know, and Michael Jordan, who is more connected to the game of basketball than Michael bleeping Jordan. He has sold. Grousbeck sold. Mark Cuban before it was somebody who, again, part of Mark Cuban's entire identity and outlook on life was based on his control and ownership of the Dallas Mavericks. I find it really interesting that these people are electing to step away. Now, maybe the number is just too high, and it's impossible to turn down $6.1 billion to sell your team here. And Mark Cuban sold the Mavericks for, what was it? Like, was it
5, I think, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe the Bus family all kind of come together and say, hey, we've had a really good run, especially if they win a championship in the next couple of years. They could say, hey, we can go out on top and have this crazy cash out if we do decide to sell here. But I do think it's interesting at a time where there's this giant ratings discussion. The new TV deal kicks in now. Mark Cuban apparently is on record saying that they weren't worried about this TV deal. They were a little bit worried about the next one. I do kind of wonder if all of these owners taking the payday and electing to step away from the sport, we should maybe take a little bit more note of that as part of the health of the sport.
Maybe, yeah. It's interesting because, Michael stepping away, that's a blow for the league when Jordan's like, I'm done. But he had no success at all there with the Hornets. They've been
is it really?
Yeah. Well, but it is the, the association, isn't it? Like the game's greatest. But he wasn't a great talent evaluator. He made some terrible draft picks and the team just never got going. Jeannie, obviously doesn't have kids of her own either. So I wonder, because I know the relationship with her brother Jim got soured when they had to go to court and sort of fight each other and stuff. They only own 66% though, don't they? I think the Bus, which is still a massive majority. Chunk, but it's not like an entire ownership there. But big stuff going on. Wanted to move on to this one we were going to talk about last week, as I said, and I've been hoping to see some NBA action down under for a long time. I spoke to Adam Silver at the 2016 finals, I think it was. I said, "Hey man, when are we getting some NBA in Australia?" And he said, "Well, it's not that big a market for us. Ultimately, it's like they haven't got enough money." So what has happened though is the New Orleans Pelicans will be in Australia pre-season for a couple of games. the NBL in recent years, not last season, but in recent times, has been over to the United States to play some preseason, like the NBL times NBA series, played in Philadelphia and Oklahoma City. They won a game in Oklahoma City. I think it was the Adelaide 36ers. So now we're going to see a game or two there down under. So that's a start. Most important thing here, though, and I know from the Australian basketball angle, people want to make sure that this is not just like, hey, we're sending out the Pelicans and you're going to be seeing Jose Alvarado as the number one guy. They want to see Zion. They want to see CJ McCollum, and they want to see these guys play, because there is a lot of skepticism still in Australia after 2019 when Team USA played two pre-tournament games for the World Cup against the Australian team at the MCG. There was 55,000 people there at each game. Now, this was a proper Team USA, but it was a bad experience for the fans and people left very upset. So what they're doing differently this time is they're playing in a much smaller arena, more like an NBA arena. About 20,000 people will be in there. And these games obviously aren't going to count for anything. But David Griffin was in Melbourne and he said, this is part of our preseason. We're going to be playing these games hard. We're going to be playing them fair. And our big guys are going to be playing. And that is what is huge here, because, Australia desperately wants some NBA. If you send out a team and then all of a sudden it's like, we're just going to rest this guy and this guy and this guy. It actually is, I think, a worse experience and a worse, worse feeling between Australia and the NBA if you feel like you're getting shortchanged on who's coming out there.
I really want to believe David Griffin. Like, I really, really, really do. And I'm not saying he's lying, but I just don't think we can ever confidently say Zion Williamson is going to be on the court.
Or the team.
Well, but
yeah.
I do think eventually, like, this has been the season from hell for the Pelicans. And sometimes you just get these seasons where everybody is just hurt.
Yeah.
And Memphis went through it last year. This time it was apparently the Pelicans' turn. The Dallas Mavericks currently find themselves in that kind of situation, but I feel like that was the basketball gods slapping Patrick Dumont upside the head and Nico Harrison upside the head. I do sincerely hope that Zion Williamson is out there on the court. But Leigh, we talked, I think it was a couple weeks ago, about the NBA's approach to this and how it's always exhibition games that go there, and these games are inherently kind of worthless in the grand scheme of an NBA season. And we just saw Major League Baseball have an opening day of sorts for the Dodgers in Japan. And have you seen some of the numbers?
Oh, I know.
From like the reception there with not just Shohei Ohtani, but Rohei Sasaki played for the Dodgers there. Yamamoto pitched for the Dodgers as well. And the ratings there in Japan were astronomical. 25 million people tuned in to the first game. And I believe that number went up the second one because Sasaki is more of an unknown than Yamamoto. And
your Japanese pronunciations are just off the chart, man. It's great.
I'm way, like, you guys think I'm a nut when it comes to the Lakers. I am so excited for this Dodger season. But yeah, I also played Ghost of Tsushima, and it was an incredible game, and that really helped with my Japanese. But the point here being, those games mattered. The Dodgers are 2-0. The Chicago Cubs are 0-2. And like all of those stats, everything that you saw there counts. And it'd be cool if Zion Williamson gets out there on the court.
Yeah.
But because it's an exhibition game, if the game isn't necessarily going all well, or like how are you going to actually get Zion Williamson to play like it's an actual game if it's not an actual game? And I know the travel is difficult, and flying literally halfway around the world to play there, it makes things tough. But I think that the NBA needs to find a way to make these games matter when they put these showcases on.
Well, the thing is, though, it comes back to the market, and the Australian market doesn't have the money to compete with Abu Dhabi and places like that, who have to pay a
Yeah.
huge fee to get regular season games, which the NBA is expanding on reportedly next season in Manchester and Berlin. Are definitely going to be hosting regular season games in addition to Paris. So, those cities, there's a fee involved, and the Australian market hasn't met that fee. So the NBA is saying, well, we're not selling, we're not giving you a freebie or a discount if we're selling these to the other countries for a higher fee. So that's where it's going to be. The question, the thing that does, puzzle me a little is there is the money there. It's just no one's people don't want to lose money, understandably. They want to make a return. That's obvious, but
spend money to make money.
Well, exactly, and collectively, I think once again, it's all related, isn't it? Because you get a bigger team out there, so there's more interest. You can sell ticket prices higher if it's a regular season game than you would for an exhibition game. So it's like, well, we have to invest first to get maybe the Warriors or the Suns or whoever it is, and get some big names down there playing for games that count, and then you might start to see a little return. And it won't be the first season, but if you can do it continually and build that relationship, then it heads that direction. But overall, just excited. Finally, an NBA team in Melbourne as well. Melbourne and Sydney, a huge rivalry as well, like Los Angeles and San Francisco. And Melbourne's got both these games, not sharing. Melbourne's got the Grand Prix, the Formula One Grand Prix, just had that. The biggest horse race, the Melbourne Cup. Biggest cricket match as well is in Melbourne. The biggest football match is in Melbourne. So, the interstate rivalry there still is quite passionate. So Sydney is like, hey, what's going on? You got the tennis as well? Give us something. We're like, no, keeping it all. Okay, so just want to move on here. I started talking a little bit about this on Sunday, but I will be in Hong Kong from May 17 to May 22nd for some basketball activity. It's going to be very, very exciting. Now, the only problem is here, I got this fantastic book from Austin Bell, photographer. I'll see if I've got that up the right way. Have I? I think so. Yeah. Now, this is his book called Shooting Hoops, and it's got 2,549 courts in Hong Kong that he's shot over a couple of years here. Absolutely amazing. I've been talking to my contact out there, Justin, about saying, we've got some activities planned. And I'm like, he said, okay, I want you to pick like your top 10 courts and we'll try and visit them. And I'm like, top 10? I'm like, how am I going to find 10 out of 2,549 here to go and play at? But there are some really, really amazing courts. But I'm going to try to find out, why aren't there more players from Hong Kong and China in the NBA when you've got this much dedication and commitment to basketball courts? Because, I believe part of the reason why Brazilians are such good soccer players is because they spend so much time outdoors just playing soccer. When you got all these courts, now they're not all actually 2,549 are not all outdoor courts, but they're courts. But it's like when you got that many, that's got to come from a passion from the kids who want to play, and the parents are like, go outside and play. So why haven't we seen more players out there? I wonder if there is an answer I can get while I'm there. But man, it's going to be an exciting trip. Look at the colors here. Look at this. Incredible stuff. Yeah. So
I don't really have a theory on where Chinese basketball has gone, because Yao was such a force of nature, and Kobe, when he would make trips to China, was godlike. His reception there, people, and there's always such incredible passion for almost whoever goes back there. Now, you did have that hiccup that involved what was it, Daryl Morey's tweet or retweet that I think kind of soured that relationship a little bit, but that never actually impacted Chinese passion for the sport. Maybe ruffled some feathers about the NBA in particular, but I don't understand. I it's honestly because there's certainly the number of people, there's certainly enough people there to be better at the sport, but and there's enough money being spent on the sport, and like you're talking about those courts there that also are going to drive passion for it. I really, it's honestly a great
Yeah.
question that I am completely stumped on why there aren't better Chinese basketball
Well,
players.
and the Daryl Morey tweet came 20 years after Yao was drafted. So, it's not like it was at the same time and so it derailed things. It was,
Yeah.
So at that point, once Yao was the number one pick and, the money spent by the NBA in China. I had a friend who was in China. I think it was just before COVID. And he said, like, everywhere they went, they were in Beijing and Shanghai. And he said, it's just basketball everywhere. So there was the passion there was the infrastructure, there was the money spent, but the results really weren't there in terms of not just in the NBA, but even in the World Cup. I remember thinking back again, 2002, 2003, thinking, man, China's going to be tough to beat at the World Championships in 15, 20, 30 years' time. And maybe it still will happen. But so far, it doesn't seem to have been. But I'm very excited for this trip. Anyway, also, let me just get my... can't reach. Here it is, my Spalding ball. Thanks to the good people at Spalding who are sending out balls for everywhere I'll be. So, we're going to give a lot of these away. You can win a couple of them as well. Huge shout out to Spalding who have stepped up and donated balls for this trip, and hopefully a few more coming up too that are in the works. Nothing confirmed yet, but everywhere I go, Spalding has said they will be there every step of the way, and I am very, very grateful for them for doing that. These balls are my favorite too. Really, really nice. They look so beautiful when you shoot them on those outdoor courts in the beautiful blue sky in the background. I just think they look better than the Wilson orange ones. These ones just spin. So that's coming up anyway. Hong Kong, May 17 to 22. If you are going to be there or you want to be there, shoot me a message and I'll let you know a few more details. We're still hammering out some of the details, exactly where I'm going to be and what I'll be doing, but the dates are locked in. So why don't you come on out, man? Do a little side trip to Japan on the way and come out to Hong Kong and shoot some hoops.
Yeah, I would love to. Unfortunately, Jen would divorce me. I would, hey, by the way,
there's a price for everything,
Yeah. I would love to go on one of these trips with you. Like I'm being 100% genuine here. It would be really, really cool to see, the passion for basketball outside of the States. And,
and
there's a few things I love that more than travel.
The best part is then after the games, you go and eat somewhere. And it's like, and already
Odyssey.
The people in Hong Kong have said like, we're gonna take you around a few places, and I'm like, yep, let's shoot half an hour of hoops and then go and eat for 4 hours.
I'm gonna start asking for a travel budget for the passport or whatever, wherever it goes.
We need it. Well, that wraps it up for this week. Thanks to everyone who has joined us. We'll be back on Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, when we have another look around the league and see what's going on and see how those Lakers are holding up there. It's great riding the wave of the Lakers season there with you. Hawks as well, man. The Hawks got the Warriors tomorrow night. Probably, I'm not sure if Steph's going to be playing. He picked up a knock.
Doesn't look like it.
Yeah, he's probably going to miss a couple of games here. I think he missed the game against the Bucks earlier in the week, and I think the Warriors probably with the playoffs just around the corner are maybe going to keep him out for a couple of games to make sure he gets his legs back, because he seemed a little exhausted, according to Steve Kerr.
Well, he also he fell on his tailbone last night. I don't know if you saw that clip or heard that clip.
No.
I don't know if you've ever hurt your tailbone. It's like absolutely one of the more crippling dumb injuries that you can get. And I was watching him like walk to the locker room, and I knew exactly that walk.
That's from playing with your kids in the park for 25 years.
I hurt mine back when I was still playing. I pump faked and somebody jumped up and stuck their knee right into my tailbone, and it was like just absolutely floored me. But I don't think he's going to be. And then to the point that we made a second ago. According to Mark Stein, the Pelicans say that Zion Williamson will not be playing tonight because of a lower back contusion. So, again, I hope David Griffin is right, and that Zion is going to be available to play and all that stuff. I hope that the NBA didn't screw up by sending that team abroad, because Zion is becoming far too representative of a generation of players that can't get or stay on the court.
Yeah. Anyway, we will see you guys on Sunday night around 8 p.m. Eastern. Thanks, everybody.